Hi gents, and welcome to the feedback lesson, which is based on explanation. So hopefully your teacher will either have told you to focus on this lesson, or you will have identified that most of your comments relate it to your explanations. So during this video, I'm going to explain to you what needs to be included in your explanation, and we're going to have a bit of time to improve our explanations. During this lesson, you will need to do some work on either a Google document or in your book. I don't mind which you use. And you'll need to pause the video at times to do certain activities. As we go through this, I will tell you when that is. And so you can pause the video and do a task, and then I will give you an answer to that task. It'll also be really useful if you have access to your original essay from the classroom, as it would be useful for you to see the original explanations that you did and to have a think about how those could be improved. So, firstly, we're going to have a think about some of the issues with our explanations. And to do that, I am going to read out both of these paragraphs to you. And after I read out one, I'll give you a time to pause the video and for you to identify what the problem with the explanation in this paragraph is. So, paragraph number 1. Christmas is more important than Easter because it remembers the birth of the Saviour. For example, it says in the Bible, "Today in the town of David, a Saviour has been born to you." This shows that Christmas is important because it is when Jesus was born. Therefore, Christmas is more important. I would like you to pause this now, and on your piece of paper or Google document, I'd like you to write down what's the problem with the explanation there. So when you look at that, what's wrong with that explanation? How could you improve it? When you finish that, you can resume the video. Second paragraph, Christmas is more important than Easter because it remembers the birth of the Saviour. For example, it says in the Bible, "Today in the town of David, a Saviour has been born to you." At Christmas, people give presents and spend time with family in order to celebrate this gift. Therefore, Christmas is more important. Similarly to paragraph 1, pause the video now and take some time to write down what's the problem with the explanation here and how could you improve it? What could make that explanation better? Okay, so when you've done that, we're going to go through these together and identify what the problem with the explanations are in these paragraphs. So if we look at paragraph 1 again, the explanation there is this shows that Christmas is important because it is when Jesus was born. Hopefully you all got this, but the big problem here is that that explanation is just a repeat of the point. It doesn't add anything, doesn't explain why that's important, and it doesn't really answer the question. So please try to avoid just repeating your point and your evidence in your explanation. You don't need to do that. You know that this is short in time. This time is the big issue in these answers. So don't just repeat things. Okay? Second one, the explanation says, at Christmas, people give presents and spend time with family in order to celebrate this gift. So the problem's different here. The student here has given more detail, but it doesn't actually explain the point or the evidence, and it doesn't really link to the question. So you can see that they just think, oh yeah, I know lots about Christmas, I can write all of that, I'll explain what people do at Christmas. Great, but it doesn't answer the question. The question is about, is Christmas more important than Easter? It's not about what they do. So remember in your explanation to make sure that you're linking back to the question. Okay, this happened quite a bit in people's answers, where they did give lots of detail and they explained things, but they didn't really explain anything that linked to the question directly. So it's really important that you just regularly look back and think, okay, am I explaining how my point answers the question? Not just giving random information about the festival. Okay, so there are two big problems that I think people fall into. So those two problems are repeating points and explaining things that aren't relevant to the question. So keep those in your head as we move on. So, second thing I would like you to do is the following paragraph is an example of a good explanation. So this is an example that was taken from one of you. I didn't make this up. I got this off one of your answers. And I want you to pause the video here. I'll read it out, but I want you to pause the video and then write down what makes this good. So I'll read it out and then you can pause it. So Christmas is more important to some Christians than Easter, as it represents a time when the greatest being was born. This is supported by the quote, "I am the light of the world," John 8, verse 12. This quote shows that a being that is sinless in a sinful world was born, which should be greatly celebrated, as this is the greatest good that has ever been brought into the world. This means that we should celebrate this moment as greatly as possible, instead of thinking about events in his life, being grateful that he was born into the world. Therefore, Christmas is more important to some Christians than Easter. Okay? Pause the video here and write down what makes this good or better than the previous explanations that we looked at. Okay, so first of all, I am not saying this is perfect, but it is obviously a lot better than the first two. So what makes it so good? So if you look here, you'll notice how long this explanation is compared to your point and your evidence. When you look back at a paragraph, your explanation should be the longest part of that paragraph, because that is the part where you're explaining what the point and the evidence mean and how it relates to the question. So naturally, it should be longer. Also notice that this explanation explains what the point and the evidence say while also relating it to the question. So it explains how Jesus was the greatest being. It explains the quote, but then it also links it to why Christmas is more important than Easter. Okay, it says here, we should celebrate this moment instead of thinking about events in his life. So it links Christmas and Easter to each other and compares them in this explanation. Okay, that's a really high level skill. It's really good evaluation skills. So that will immediately put you up a few marks. So this is an example that I want you to try and follow. So when you have a go at redoing your explanations now, I want you to explain your point and your evidence in your explanation, but then also to link that back to the question. Okay? So you're explaining it and linking it back to the question. So sometimes your link might actually be part of your explanation. That's totally fine. Okay? And then the final task that I want you to do is to have a go at redrafting your answer. This should actually be really quick because the structure and the outline of your answer is there. So you can copy and paste things onto another Google document. And all I want you to do is to focus on the explanations in each of your paragraphs. So go through each of your paragraphs. You should have 4 and a conclusion. Please make sure you have that. And in every paragraph, I want you to have a go at doing your explanation again. Remember explaining your point and your evidence and how that links to the argument overall, how that links to the question. I will give some of these a look and give you some comments. So yeah, try your best. It shouldn't take you very long to do this, but hopefully this has helped you to think differently about your explanations and what you need to add. Thank you very much, and I will see you all soon.